September 28, 2009. A man dies peacefully in a Bucharest hospital. His name, Nicolae Pleșiță. For 40 years, he hunted resistance fighters in mountains, tortured dissidents in interrogation rooms, and hired international terrorists to bomb civilians. After communism fell, he lived in luxury, laughed on television about dragging victims by their beards, and died completely unpunished. While Nicolae Ceaușescu sat in palaces, Pleșiță did the dirty work, the hunting, the beating, the killing. This is the story of the enforcer who made dictatorship possible. Welcome to Dictators Files, The Dark Side of Power. 1948. Nicolae Pleșiță is 19 years old when the Securitate recruits him from the Communist Youth Organization. He's nobody special, just a young man from Curtea de Argeș, willing to do what others won't. The Securitate is Romania's secret police, modeled on the Soviet NKVD and designed for one purpose: terrorize the population into submission. The organization needs young men without conscience, without hesitation, and without mercy. Pleșiță fits perfectly. He's instantly promoted to warrant officer at the Pitești Securitate branch, bypassing years of normal advancement. This is where Romania conducts its most brutal re-education experiments, where prisoners are forced to torture each other, where human beings are systematically broken. Pleșiță works alongside these operations, learning interrogation, surveillance, and the art of breaking prisoners. Between 1951 and 1956, he's promoted 3 times: head of Securitate services in Regiunea Arad, then Vlcea, then Argeș. Each promotion rewards ruthlessness, and each position builds his network of informants. By 1956, he's regional head in Pitești, commanding dozens of agents. Then in 1958, Pleșiță receives his defining mission: eradicate the anti-communist resistance hiding in the Transylvanian mountains. Since 1944, armed resistance fighters have hidden in the Carpathian and Transylvanian mountains, refusing to submit to communist rule. These aren't professional soldiers. They're former officers, peasants, students, priests who escaped to the forests rather than live under Soviet occupation. They hide in caves, move at night, and survive on what villagers secretly provide. Pleșiță leads operations hunting them like animals. His methods are systematic and brutal. He plants informants in villages, intercepts family correspondence, threatens relatives, and uses captured fighters as bait to lure others. When hideouts are discovered, Securitate forces attack at night with overwhelming numbers. The partisans, exhausted and outgunned, are either killed in gunfights or captured. Captured fighters face interrogation by Pleșiță's men, then execution or disappearance into labor camps. Their families are harassed, their villages terrorized to cut off all support for the resistance. By the early 1960s, the last resistance fighters are eliminated. The mountains are clean, and Pleșiță has proven himself capable of sustained brutality without hesitation or remorse. Historian Denis Delatant observed, "The Securitate's campaign against the armed resistance demonstrated totalitarian control at its most efficient and merciless." Pleșiță rose through the ranks precisely because he understood that terror requires not just violence, but systematic, patient, unrelenting violence. He hunted humans the way others hunt game. For his work eradicating the resistance, Pleșiță receives communist distinction, official recognition that he's proven himself. The regime knows when they need someone eliminated. Pleșiță delivers without question and without witnesses. In 1961, he's transferred to Cluj, Transylvania's intellectual center and university city. His mission shifts from hunting armed partisans to surveilling intellectuals, artists, and potential dissidents. Cluj is different from the mountains. This is where Romania's intellectuals teach, write, and think. Pleșiță's job is ensuring they don't think the wrong things. As head of the secret police apparatus in Cluj, he builds a massive informant network monitoring universities, theaters, publishing houses, and churches. Professors inform on students, students inform on professors, and everyone knows the Securitate is watching. Ironically, while running the secret police, Pleșiță attends the University of Cluj himself, graduating from the history department in 1968. He studies Romania's past while systematically suppressing anyone who questions its present. In 1972, after 6 years terrorizing Cluj's intelligentsia, Pleșiță is brought to Bucharest and promoted to head of the First Directorate, the Homeland Secret Police. 2 years later, he becomes Secretary General of the Interior Ministry, then First Deputy to the Interior Ministers. In April 1977, Nicolae Ceaușescu personally promotes him to Lieutenant General. He's 48 years old and has spent nearly 30 years perfecting the art of state terror. That same year, coal miners in the Jiu Valley go on strike, protesting working conditions and demanding better pay. For Ceausescu, this is dangerous. Workers uniting against the regime could spread, could become revolution. Pleșiță is sent to suppress the strike using intimidation, selective arrests, and violence. The strike leaders are identified, isolated, and disappeared. Workers are threatened with imprisonment, with losing their jobs, with their families suffering. Within days, the strike collapses. The miners return to work in silence, and terror keeps them silent. Strike leaders vanish into prisons, and the Jiu Valley learns its lesson. Resistance brings suffering. Pleșiță's success in crushing the strike earns him the regime's highest trust. He's promoted to command the Interior Ministry's officer training school, positioning him to head foreign intelligence when the opportunity arrives. That same year, Romanian writer Paul Goma commits an unforgivable act. He speaks out. Goma writes public letters supporting Czechoslovakia's Charter 77 movement, calling for human rights in Romania and directly challenging Ceausescu. In February 1977, Ceausescu delivers a speech attacking traitors of the country, specifically naming Goma. The message is clear: make an example of him. Pleșiță personally takes charge of Goma's interrogation, and what happens in those Securitate cells is something Pleșiță will later recount with fondness. The interrogation room is bare concrete, soundproofed, with a single chair bolted to the floor. Goma is brought in, and Pleșiță begins his work. He beats Goma repeatedly, and when that's not enough, he grabs Goma by his beard and drags him around the interrogation room across the concrete floor. Other prisoners are forced to watch. This is what happens to dissidents. Years later, on Romanian television, Pleșiță recounts this torture with fondness, smiling as he describes dragging Goma by his beard. He shows no shame, no remorse, only satisfaction at a job well done. Paul Goma later describes the interrogation. It wasn't just what they did to me physically, but what they did to me mentally. We were turned into different people. What they did was monstrous. Under international pressure, Romania allows Goma to leave for France in 1977, but the Securitate isn't finished with him. Political scientist Lavinia Stan analyzed the systematic nature of Securitate terror. Pleșiță represented the perfect Securitate operative, intelligent enough to run complex operations, brutal enough to torture personally, and shameless enough to brag about it afterward. The Securitate didn't just want compliance. They wanted to destroy dissidents psychologically, to break them so completely that even in exile, they'd never recover. In 1978, disaster strikes the Securitate. Ion Mihai Pleșiță, head of foreign intelligence, defects to the United States. He's the highest-ranking defector from the Eastern Bloc during the entire Cold War, and his defection devastates Romania's intelligence networks. Ceausescu needs someone absolutely loyal, someone proven, someone who will never betray. He chooses Nicolae Pleșiță. 1980. Nicolae Pleșiță takes command of Romania's foreign intelligence service with a clear mission: hunt down defectors, silence dissidents abroad, and restore the intelligence apparatus Plesita destroyed. Radio Free Europe broadcasts truth into Romania from its Munich headquarters. News of arrests, reports on poverty, exposure of Ceausescu's lies. For the regime, RFE is an enemy that must be destroyed. Paul Goma, now in exile in Paris, continues writing and speaking against the regime. Other Romanian dissidents in France, Britain, and Germany do the same. And Pleșiță, protected by American intelligence, is planning to publish a book exposing Ceausescu's crimes. Pleșiță needs a solution, someone capable of bombing Radio Free Europe, assassinating dissidents across Western Europe, and killing Pleșiță in America. The Securitate's own agents can't operate freely in the West without being caught. He needs a professional, someone with no connection to Romania, someone feared, someone proven. He hires Ilich Ramirez Sanchez, known to the world as Carlos the Jackal, a Venezuelan-born international terrorist responsible for bombings, kidnappings, and murders across Europe. In 1981, Pleșiță brings Carlos to Bucharest and provides him with everything necessary for the operation: plastic explosives, fake documents, videotapes and photographs of Radio Free Europe's headquarters, detailed floor plans, and $400,000 in cash. They plan attacks on Romanian dissidents living in France and the bombing of Radio Free Europe. Carlos, a professional terrorist, appreciates Pleșiță's thoroughness and the regime's protection. February 21, 1981. Munich, West Germany. Radio Free Europe's headquarters operates around the clock, broadcasting into Romania and across the Eastern Bloc. At 1:30 a.m., a bomb explodes in the building's electrical installation room. The blast rocks the structure, shatters windows, and sends staff scrambling in panic. 9 people are injured, some seriously. The building is heavily damaged, and broadcasts are temporarily disrupted. International outrage follows. This is terrorism on West German soil. Carlos escapes, and Pleșiță provides him shelter in Romania as promised. Ceausescu personally sells Carlos additional weapons and explosives for future operations, along with equipment to produce counterfeit passports and driver's licenses. Journalist John Follane, who wrote the definitive biography of Carlos the Jackal, observed, "The Romanian connection represented state-sponsored terrorism at its most cynical. Ceausescu's regime hired Carlos not out of ideology, but pure pragmatism. They needed dissidents and defectors killed, and Carlos was willing to kill for money." Pleșiță facilitated this arrangement with professional efficiency, treating murder for hire as just another intelligence operation. 1982. Paul Goma, now living in exile in Paris, continues his activism. Unknown to him, the Securitate has planned his assassination. Pleșiță sends agent Matei Haiducu to Paris with a simple mission: poison Goma at a restaurant, make it look natural, eliminate the dissident. But Haiducu, sickened by the mission, defects to French counterintelligence, the DST. He reveals the entire assassination plot. The French stage a fake assassination attempt. Haiducu meets Goma at a restaurant, prepares the poisoned drink. Then a French agent posing as a clumsy waiter accidentally spills it. Goma survives, and the Securitate believes the mission succeeded. Pleșiță never discovers that his agent betrayed him, that the French knew everything, that Goma is alive because a Securitate operative grew a conscience. Pleșiță's Foreign Intelligence Service continues operations across Western Europe, surveilling the entire Romanian diaspora, attempting multiple assassinations of Plesita, all failed. Allegedly bribing Western politicians, including giving $400,000 to François Mitterrand's 1981 presidential campaign, and building connections with Middle Eastern terrorist networks. In 1984, Nicolae Pleșiță is suddenly removed as head of foreign intelligence and demoted to commanding a teacher training school. The reasons remain unclear. Possibly Ceausescu feared he knew too much. Possibly Plesita's defection revelations damaged him politically. But he keeps his rank of lieutenant general, keeps his luxurious villa, keeps his connections. He just waits quietly for the regime to fall, confident that when it does, his service to the state will protect him. December 1989. The Romanian Revolution erupts, and Nicolae Ceaușescu flees Bucharest by helicopter. 5 days later, he and Elena are captured, tried by military tribunal, and executed by firing squad on Christmas Day. Protesters storm Securitate offices across Romania, searching for files and answers. Thousands demand justice for decades of torture, surveillance, and murder. Nicolae Pleșiță? He retires quietly with full honors, keeps the villa Ceausescu gave him, and begins collecting one of Romania's highest state pensions. In 1998, 9 years after the revolution, Pleșiță is finally charged. Complicity in the Radio Free Europe bombing, murder, assault, kidnapping, false imprisonment, and perjury. Germany requests extradition. Romania denies extradition and tries him in a Romanian military court instead. The trial drags on for over a decade, interrupted repeatedly, delayed endlessly. Pleșiță's defense is simple. I was following orders from Ceausescu. He refuses legal counsel, calls the charges idiocies, and admits his crimes openly. When asked about Carlos the Jackal, Pleșiță testifies, I found him sympathetic. Ceausescu ordered me to contact and cooperate with him. When questioned about his 40-year career, he states calmly, this doesn't mean that during the 42 years I spent in the world of espionage, I was either a saint or a pillar of the church. When pressed about dissidents he hunted, he admits without emotion, I killed them, of course. 2009. After 11 years of proceedings, the verdict arrives. Nicolae Pleșiță is found not guilty on all charges. Paul Goma, watching from Paris, sees his torturer walk free. Victims of Securitate terror across Romania Watch the man who hunted them declared innocent. The system protects its own. Pleșiță continues living in the villa given to him by Ceausescu. His state pension is $2,250 per month, more than 6 times the average Romanian pension, one of the highest in the entire country. And then he does something that outrages even a cynical public. He appears on Romanian television, smiling, laughing, reminiscing about the good old days. On live television, he describes beating Paul Goma and dragging him by his beard around interrogation cells. He recounts it with fondness, as if sharing a funny story with friends. On another show, he calls his crimes mere trifles, dismisses torture as necessary, and defends the Securitate as working for the country's progress. About Radio Free Europe, he states without shame, "I wanted to kill all those at Radio Free Europe. They were all CIA agents. I regret we couldn't kill them all." Romanian journalist Andreea Pora writes, "At a time when President Ceausescu was condemning communism in parliament, Nicolae Pleșiță was laughing on live television broadcasts, casually admitting his crimes, telling us they were mere trifles." How is this possible? Because former Securitate officers control Romanian politics and business. They hold positions in government, run companies, staff the intelligence services. The system Pleșiță helped build survived him, and it protects its own. Historian Denis Delatant observed, "Pleșiță represents the perfect example of a Securitate boss who openly assumed his actions of political policing and even murders committed by the communists, but who lived a carefree existence in post-1989 Romania. The failure to prosecute Securitate officers isn't a legal failure, it's a political failure. The system refuses to punish itself." September 28, 2009, Nicolae Pleșiță dies at age 80 in a Romanian intelligence service hospital, being treated for diabetes and other illnesses. His funeral is attended by Iulian Vlad, the last Securitate chief, and several other former Securitate officers. Current Romanian intelligence service agents stop reporters from attending, citing family wishes. He's buried with honors in his hometown of Crătea de Argeș. The man who hunted resistance fighters, tortured dissidents, hired international terrorists, and bragged about it on television is laid to rest with dignity. For 40 years, Nicolae Pleșiță hunted humans in mountains, tortured them in cells, hired terrorists to bomb civilians, and ordered assassinations across Europe. After communism fell, he lived in luxury, laughed about his crimes on television, stood trial and was acquitted, and died peacefully in a state hospital. Nicolae Ceaușescu was executed on Christmas Day, 1989. But the men who did his dirty work, they lived on, protected by the system they built. Pleșiță wasn't the dictator. He was the weapon that made dictatorship possible, and he was never held accountable.